Anytime you think to yourself, I don't want them to think, or I don't want them to feel, you have to realize that you are on someone else's side of the street. Is that person entitled? Or have you just been serving yourself up on a platter? You're not saying no. You're not telling the truth about your limits. And then you're pissed about them asking. People can and will ask you to do the most ridiculous shit. Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. So in today's video, I'm going to be handling why is it so difficult as HFCs for us to manage boundaries. What does it mean to us? And I'm giving you some ideas of what you can do. So today we're really just breaking down why is it so challenging for us to set boundaries and to stick to boundaries and to respect other people's boundaries. So that's what today's episode is all about. So let's start with what are boundaries. For those of you who are late to the game or the party, I've been talking about this for years, but I do think it remains a mystery to many of us. It is still a massively misunderstood concept, personal boundaries. So I want you to think of your boundaries as your own personal rules of engagement. This lets other people know what's okay with you and what's not okay with you, right? It is basically made up of your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers. Why is this important? Because your preferences that are unique to you, right? What you like, your desires, your limits, your deal breakers, they're not just the things that make up your boundaries. Those are also the things that make you uniquely you. And so our boundaries are so much more than like the distance we put between us and other people. My friend Dr. Alexandra Solomon had this great quote the other day about boundaries are the distance I keep myself from you where I can also have a regulated nervous system. Her quote was way better than that, but that was basically the idea. And I was like, that's true. So we have the idea of boundaries, but you have your physical boundaries, your emotional boundaries, your mental boundaries, material boundaries, sexual boundaries. So we have a whole bunch of areas of our life where we need to be considering our boundaries. But why the combination of being a high-functioning codependent? Why does that complicate our relationship to boundary setting and boundary maintaining and respecting the boundary of others? Well, let's define what is a high-functioning codependent. This means that you are overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the situations, the relationships, the finances, the careers of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace, right? Maybe it could be your psychological well-being, your financial well-being, because sometimes we're giving people money, but we really can't afford to. If you say a lot, I got it, or I have to be the one to do it, then you probably identify as being an HFC, which is a high-functioning codependent. So if we look at the intersection of boundaries and HFC-ness, why is it important? Well, codependent relationships are built on disordered boundaries, right? That's the foundation of any kind of codependent relationship, whether it's garden variety codependency or high-functioning codependency. You're talking about it is a relational issue. It is about the way you are relating to other people and to yourself. What are we really seeking in being HFC? Well, it's an overt or covert bid, desire, attempt to control other people's outcomes. That's really what being a high-functioning codependent is. And I think that boundaries for a lot of people still have a bad rap, as if to have healthy boundaries or to assert your boundaries, you have to be mean, you have to be selfish, you have to be inconsiderate. And I can tell you from doing this work for 27 years that truly healthy boundaries are the bridge to the healthy relationships that you want, to better self-esteem, to better physical health for you, mental health for you. I mean, this is a fact. So they're really not blocks at all. They're also the bridges to deeper intimacy in your relationships, right? Because when you tell the truth about your limits, about your preferences, about your desires, you're letting the people in your life really know who you are. And so much of the time, when we're HFCs, we're going through the motions, right? We're kind of on autopilot with all of our doing and taking care of and making sure everyone has what they need. And when we're doing that, are we being authentic? Are we being vulnerable? Are we telling the truth about how we feel or what we want? And I can tell you, most of the time, the answer is no. And so how can people know us if we don't let them know us? And with my therapy clients and myself in my 20s, this wasn't intentional, right? I wasn't purposefully like withholding myself from others. I just didn't know how to get off the hamster wheel of being of service that I was on. The hamster wheel of what I thought was being loving and giving. And of course, in hindsight, a lot of it had to do with being controlling. Because anytime you think to yourself, I don't want them to think, or I don't want them to feel, you have to realize that you are on someone else's side of the street. Because it's hard enough for us to get a handle on what we think and what we feel. Trust me, that shit is a full-time job. But when you're a high-functioning codependent, you are so dialed into, a lot of times it's what we think other people think and feel. It's a fear. Most of the time it's a projection. But it doesn't matter, because what it's doing is it's taking away time for us being relating to ourselves in a healthy way, right? Because when you think about it, why do HFCs have such a hard time with boundaries? Well, part of it is that we are so outwardly focused, right? We're so focused on other people. We're so focused in our environments. And I'm going to go through some of the HFC traits and just relate them to boundaries, just so that we have a more clear picture of this. But think about it. What are we often doing? We're often putting other people above ourselves, right? So we're not even in touch with our needs. Because if you had asked me when I was 26 what I needed or what I wanted, I just wanted everyone to be happy. I just didn't want there to be any problems. I just didn't want there to be any conflict, But that's not the same as knowing what I actually needed. And I also think that a lot of us were taught that if we had needs or if we put ourselves first, that we were being selfish. We're used to self-sacrificing, because that's also part of what we've been doing. We minimize anything that is disappointing to us because we're like, I don't want to make a big deal out of nothing, right? It's so easy to do those things, especially when you've been trained to do them. And I think that so much of the time we just didn't have healthy boundaries modeled for us, right? We didn't know what they were because no one taught us that. What they did teach us, though, that being nice and being agreeable and being helpful, these were all very socially sanctioned behaviors. And so moving away from that, so much of this process and so much of what I'm teaching about, writing about, all the things I'm doing is about unlearning these learned behaviors or these limiting beliefs, because that's really what they are. So let's look at another thing that we struggle with a lot of times as HFCs is we have difficulty accepting other people's boundaries or respecting other people's boundaries, right? Because think about how much of the time you're anticipating other people's needs or anticipating what needs to get done. And so much of the time making assumptions around what other people need or want, we're really overstepping their boundaries, but we just don't see it that way, right? Because we're like, but I'm helping. And again, if someone isn't asking you to help, if someone doesn't want you to help, or are you helping, or are you just doing what you want to do? You know what I mean? We also don't consider other people's sovereignty when we're auto-advice giving, which is one of the behaviors we're going to be talking about. Let's look at some of the traits and see where they intersect with disordered boundaries, right? Overgiving. That's having disordered internal boundaries. Always feeling like you have to fix other people's problems. A lot of times, even if they haven't asked you, again, a boundary issue, right? Auto-advice giving, a boundary issue. Being overly self-sacrificing, a boundary issue. Because again, that's an internal thing, because what happens when we're overly self-sacrificing, that's really a form of self-abandonment. And how do we feel after doing that? Bad, mad, pissed off, unimportant, feel like people are taking advantage of us. It's interesting how years ago, I remember talking to my therapist and talking about someone being entitled. I just couldn't believe this friend was asking me to do this after I'd already done so much for her and blah, blah, blah. And my therapist was like, is that person entitled? Or have you just been serving yourself up on a platter? Like, you're not saying no. You're not telling the truth about your limits. And then you're pissed about them asking. And she was like, Terri, people can and will ask you to do the most ridiculous shit. Like, people can and will. Because here's the thing. Takers are going to take. And givers are going to give. So let's not get caught up in the wrong part of the equation, which is like, why would someone ask me to do that? She's like, who the hell cares? The only question is, if you don't want to do it, are you going to assert the truth about how you feel that you don't want to do it? And it's like, wow, it took the whole, because it can be so distracting. Do you know this side conversation, this shit talking about other people, this being like, Betty's got some fucking nerve, right? That does nothing for our mental health. And we'll never know. Another question, a lot of my therapy clients would always want to know, why would someone do that? Ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, someone being mean, whatever it is, Why? Dude, that is the wrong question, because we're never going to have an answer to why other people do what they do. Even if they give us, it won't make sense to us, right? But that's also, again, part of getting healthy and being more psychologically and mentally well is knowing what questions are ours to answer. And why someone else is doing some shit is not one of them. What am I going to do? That's definitely one of them. Back to the traits of HFC and the boundaries where they intersect or they overlap, is you have auto-accommodating, which is also a disordered boundary, right? I'm doing something in the wild. I told you guys the story of being in the hair salon and, having the backup at the sink and me laying in a sink with like a mask on my hair and feeling stressed out of my mind because it's like, now people are waiting for the sink. I don't want them to think I'm a jerk. Again, I'm trying to auto-accommodate to my environment and asking the assistant if I should move because they need the sink, and her saying, we're fine, we got it covered. But the point is, in that auto-accommodating to my atmosphere, to what was happening in my environment, what I wasn't doing was focusing inward. I was taking responsibility for something that wasn't mine. And this is what we do when we auto-accommodate, which is why healthy boundaries are such an incredibly important part. We have the over and under functioning dynamic also, which creates really disordered boundaries in relationships. So if you're someone who is always like, I got it, I can get it. No, I'll stop at the dry cleaner. Don't worry. I'll do it. It starts to be uneven. And then you have one person doing so much more of everything to keep the relationship afloat. And that creates resentment for both people because nobody likes to feel managed, right? The person who's not getting to do anything, or they get used to it and they love it, and then you're pissed. So either way, it's not a healthy situation that we want to be in. So we can see, right, these overlaps and why I'll always be talking about boundaries for the rest of my life and career as I talk about mental health, because it all comes together. You cannot be in recovery from being an HFC and not be a boundary boss. And which is why I wrote the Boundary Boss book first, and then the Too Much book about high-functioning codependency. When you start setting boundaries with people, for those of you who are just sort of beginning that boundary journey or going back and forth about it, some people are going to react badly to it, right? People are going to notice that you're changing the dance, but it's okay. And part of not being a high-functioning codependent is realizing that their response and their reaction is their own, right? It's not yours to manage. It's never too late to learn how to be more of a boundary boss, no matter where you are on your journey right now with boundaries. So even if you say you're a boundary disaster, okay, well, welcome. You're in the right place. Because you can always go from where you are to somewhere better when it comes to boundaries and codependency. So no judgment, right? This is learned behavior, you guys, and you learned it and you can unlearn it as well. It's just about wanting to. All you need is the desire. I will provide. I am providing the books and the free videos and all the things that you need to learn it. But again, anything worth learning takes time. It takes concentrated effort. I want to say thank you so much for being here with me today. I so appreciate you. And you guys, if you love this, if this works for you, if you like this style, join my community. Go to terricole.com/TCM for Terri Cole membership. We do this every single solitary week, but we do it live, and I would love to have you. And as always, take care of you.